Okay, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be part of this event, and I'm really looking forward to sharing some of this research and some of these techniques with you. So let's have a look at what we're going to be doing in this session. Got a few objectives here. We've got that we're going to be looking at the grief cycle and how it affects us. We'll be focusing on 6 areas of your life that can improve your well-being, and I'll share some ways to instantly calm anxiety. We're all feeling that at the moment, and some wellbeing practices that will help you cope with some very stressful and negative events that are happening all around us. So where do we start? We start with the day before it all began for us. Remember those days when we could go to a cafe and no problems, we wouldn't even be thinking about how far we were from people. We wouldn't be thinking, you know, I'm going to go into this cafe and maybe I'll catch a cold. I remember the day, it was the 16th of March, when a lot changed for me and in my business. I deliver a lot of programs face-to-face, and all of that changed. So I received emails from all of my clients, and I emailed some of my clients as well, because we had, you know, received this news about stage 3 or some kind of lockdown here in Melbourne. And I remember it, and it sort of imprints on my memory in the same way that September 11 did. And I remember, you know, the television, what was on the television on that day. And so I think, you know, it's quite a huge event and significant for all of us. And so how are you doing at this point in time? Would you say that you are surviving or thriving? So you know that you've got a little workbook for this, because I love doing sessions, but I also love that you can take something away with you, or you do some kind of activity. So in your little workbook, you see on the bottom of my slides here a page number, and on page 2 of the workbook there's a few questions there. First of all, there's a little tick box to say how you feel that you're coping with the current situation. Would you say that you're more just sort of surviving things, or you're further along the continuum and you're more towards thriving? So just take a second and tick that off. I mean, we're here together for 40 minutes. I may not give you enough time to do all the activities, but you've got your book there, so that's great. And the next question, my question to you is, what do you miss most about life before? I know that I miss picking up a coffee. I miss, at the moment, going bike riding with my husband. We used to ride quite a fair distance. We're restricted to a 5-kilometre range at the moment. I miss seeing family. I miss seeing friends. I miss the travel. I used to travel quite a lot for work. So what are the things that you're missing at the moment? Just take a moment to think about those things. And then think about what you've lost since the COVID outbreak. And a lot of people have lost some big things. People have lost work, they've lost connection to people, they've lost, even if they're still in their roles, they've lost seeing their colleagues and that kind of light interaction that you have with people during the day. So what do you feel that you have lost? And I think it's important to start there, because we don't want to sugarcoat anything. We really do want to acknowledge what this scenario has done for us or to us. So I wanted to talk to you about the grief cycle, because any loss puts us in a grief cycle. And I'm showing you a model that has 6 steps to grief, and in the grief cycle. The original cycle was created by Kubler-Ross, and the 6th step was added by Kessler. So I just wanted to talk to you about that. It says in the centre of the circle, the stages of mourning and grief are universal and are experienced by all after loss. And these stages can overlap and don't always go in order. So we can kind of, it's almost like a wheel of fortune. We can go back and forward in this grief cycle. But let's think of that day. For me, it was the 16th of March, and there was a sense of shock. It was, what's going on here? This is really serious. What's happening? I think initially when we heard about the pandemic, it seemed far away. It seemed in a different country. but it became fairly evident that it was a threat that was upon us right now, and our lives were about to change in a fairly major way. So we can have a sense of numbness here, and we're just acting. We're just kind of doing what we need to do. There can also be a sense of denial. This is not happening. I don't believe this is happening. And I think some people I find are still there. This is not happening. I don't believe it. Then there can be anger. You know, this has really impacted my life. This has impacted my finances. This has impacted my sense of safety. And people can feel really frustrated, really anxious. What's going to happen? Where am I going to get money from? So an irritation. And we can, you know, if you've noticed that people around you are a bit irritated, you know, this can be part of that grief cycle. And then, you know, some people can get into, you know, along the way, once the anger sort of gives way, it can give way to a real sense of sadness and depression and detachment, the sense of how long is this going to go on for? Am I ever going to get my life back? And we feel overwhelmed. It's difficult to manage all the things that I've got to manage. I've got children at home. I've got, you know, finances to manage. I'm missing my friends. And this point in grief is the most uncomfortable, because it just feels like you're in the middle of the ocean and you can't see land, because it doesn't feel like it's ever going to end. And it can be quite a deep feeling of sadness and loss. A lot of people try and avoid this. They prefer to stay in anger because it's more energizing. But we really need to go through this in order to kind of really acknowledge what we've lost. Once we're kind of on the outer edges of this depression and sort of detachment, we can get into a dialogue or a kind of a bargaining. We can say, well, you know what, if I wear a mask, if I stick to everything and all the rules, in just a few weeks, I'll get my life back. And so we kind of do that bargaining, that kind of exchange. And at this point, it's really important too that we talk to each other and say what our experiences are. We tell our story. This is what's happened to me. This is how I'm experiencing life at the moment. What about you? And we're really grappling for meaning. How did this happen? And once we've kind of, you know, we've gone through that struggle to try and find meaning in this, we're telling our story, it can open up that we can explore other options of ways of coping and get a new plan. Well, this is, you know, this is what I'm going to be doing now. And we can, you know, return to a meaningful life. Have that sense of empowerment, get our security back and our self-esteem, and really connect with that meaning. So I think don't be too hard on yourself if you're still sitting, you know, in some sadness and there's some anger there. We get news every day about, you know, we don't get great news every day. We hear about people passing away. We hear about people getting this virus. There's a lot of stuff on the news which I think can fling us right back into a sense of disempowerment and sadness. So just be careful with that and limit how much you're looking at and watching as well, and try and, I think, if anything, reach out to people and tell them your story. Reach out to as many people as you can. So I want you to take a moment now. Which grief cycle emotions have you experienced over the last few months? And I'm sure you're already thinking about that. So you can just take a second, just kind of note that in your book. And once you have, I think what we want to focus on at this point is security and safety. Because if we're feeling lost, I always say to myself, focus on the 5 F's of safety. For me, it's making sure there's enough food in the house, making sure my finances are in order, family, making sure my family are safe and cared for, reaching out to my friends, and looking after my health and fitness. So they're my 5 F's of safety for me. You might have different ones that create safety for you. I try and ignore Insta happy posts, people who are, you know, I don't know, bathing in the sunshine, or I don't know. I don't tend to see as many anymore, but I try and ignore that, because we know that social media is not real life, and it's kind of skewed towards I'm only going to post if I'm feeling happy. And build an adapted social system, which I'm sure you have been doing. We can't go and see people, but you know, I know that I've been having Zoom coffees with people, a few Zoom dinners, my book club's on Zoom, I'm living on Zoom, and so I'm kind of replacing and modifying my social interactions and really making sure that I still have my social interactions. They're just different. They're not ideal, they're not what I'd absolutely like, but I'll take this modified version for now. That's my part of my bargaining. I'll do this now for the reward later. Include and protect the vulnerable. That's obviously very, very important. Both my two parents are still alive. Check in with them. My mum particularly is doing it hard at the moment. My stepfather passed away in March. And we're all grieving that. So his loss. And so I need to take more care and give mum a bit more attention at the moment. And routine is probably one of the most important things that creates safety. I can't stress this enough, you know, that particularly for children, when things are unpredictable and things are happening in the world that are a bit scary, when you can rely on certain things happening at certain times of the day and certain times of the week, there's a real comfort in that. Okay, so I think when we get around in the grief cycle, we do have a mental shift, and once things are quite safe, some adjustment starts. You might start to crave some challenges and higher level work, because when we're sort of sitting in that sort of despondent and sad part of grief, it is quite difficult to do the normal work that we're doing. I think some of you might find it's difficult to concentrate, can't string sentences together. It's more difficult writing emails. And so if you are feeling that, it's okay, it's normal. Just kind of wait till that sensation passes, or wait till you get that clarity. I ride the wave of clarity in my life. I think, here I go. I'm in a slipstream of lucidity. I'm going to go for it. Look, we're up and down, we're back and forward. Be patient. We're swinging back and forward in that grief cycle. This is a marathon, it's not a sprint, so take it really easy with yourself and others. I say to myself, prepare for 12 to 18 months that this is going to be hanging around. Look, if we started in March, it's definitely going to be part of our lives next March and into next year, and hopefully there's a vaccine that sets us all a bit free. All right, I wanted to show you this post. I thought it was a really, really funny post. By Troy Johnson. He says, you know, day 1 of quarantine, I'm going to meditate and do body weight training, you know, motivated. But day 4, he's just pouring the ice cream into the pasta. I think sometimes we make these goals and we're going to be doing all this, and then, you know, we swing back in that grief cycle and it's not happening. I wanted to ask you about your dreams. How are they? Who's been having some weird dreams, wacky dreams? That's pretty normal. I mean, we've got a lot coming at us that can be sort of traumatizing us, and even traumatizing us at the subconscious level. So dreams are that play a function of kind of processing our emotions, and particularly those strong ones that we're not really processing during the day. So, you know, don't be surprised if you're having some really strange dreams at the moment. All right, so how are you feeling right now? If you could describe your emotion right now. I mean, you're sitting in this webinar and you're listening to what I'm talking about. What's your emotion? Are you feeling concentrating? Are you feeling, I hope you're not feeling bored. I hope you're feeling satisfied. I hope you're feeling optimistic. But you might be feeling other things. You might be feeling miserable. You might be feeling hurt. There's a whole lot of things we could be feeling. And I think what's really helpful for us is to get very specific about labeling our emotions. I mean, this is part of emotional intelligence, is just increasing our awareness of exactly the emotions that we're feeling. Because emotions are information. They tell us where we're at. But at the same time as being information, we need to also think about what we can do with these emotions. Do we allow these emotions to overtake us, or do we feel empowered to act on this information that we're getting from our emotion system. And I'm sure that a lot of us are having some fairly uncomfortable emotions at the moment, emotions that we would prefer not to be feeling. So I'm going to show you a process that might help you accept your thoughts and feelings rather than fighting them or feeling guilty about them. This process's goal is to allow you to enter the present moment and make an empowered choice about taking action. I think a lot of the time we feel pressure to feel happy, and if we're not feeling that way, I think that we can feel guilty or ashamed. And I think that, I studied positive psychology. I've got postgrad qualifications in that, and my undergrad was in psychology as well. And I think our particular generation has this this pressure to be positive and or to be feeling positive emotions all of the time. And that's what I would I think the first wave of positive psychology was very focused on, can we at least pay attention to some of our positive emotions, which I thought that was a really good thing. And then we kind of had the second wave of positive psychology where it was kind of like all emotions give us information. They're all good. They all have a function for us. But at least now we know what the positive emotions do for us. So let's have a look at this particular process as part of acceptance commitment therapy. And it's a pretty simple process. I'm going to get mine out of my workbook here. I wrote notes to give you an example. I'll just turn the pages over there. It's on your page 4 of your workbook. So it's a series of questions, and it really kind of just helps you to process any uncomfortable emotions. So the first thing we do is we name the feeling. So I'm going to use the example of feeling overwhelmed. So let's say, I get to a point in my day and I'm just feeling overwhelmed. My next question to myself is, what sensations do I feel in my body? So I might just tune in. Where am I feeling it? I'm feeling a tightness in my chest, maybe in my throat, my head sort of feeling like it's a little bit full. My stomach's a bit turny. So these are the sensations I'm feeling in my body. So I'm not pushing them aside, I'm tuning into them. What are my thoughts? Well, my thoughts might be, this is, I feel this is too much, or am I ever going to be able to cope with this? And I might simply be saying to myself, I'm feeling overwhelmed. And why am I feeling this? Now, this is where I'm thinking, okay, well, where's this feeling come from? Has anything triggered it? So I might say, well, it's just because I'm coping with homeschooling and the technology of work, which kind of keeps cutting out, and my children are interrupting me when I'm trying to get to work. I'm lucky to get sort of a 3-minute run without interruption. So that's why I'm feeling overwhelmed. Now, my next question to myself is, can I accept this feeling as a normal response to what's happening? Well, if I was talking to a friend and my friend was telling me, why they were feeling this way, and they were questioning whether they were normal, I would say, absolutely, you're normal. It's completely understandable that you're feeling overwhelmed with all of these balls that you're juggling at once. So that's where, that you would have compassion for a friend if they were telling you this, and give yourself that compassion. The next question is, what is important right now, to me right now? And I need to stop and think and go, well, what's important is that there's a sense of calm, that my home environment feels safe for myself and my family. And what's also important is that I do look after myself. So I need to just register what's important and then ask myself, well, what internal strengths do I have to take action in response to how I'm feeling? Well, if I were to tune into my own strengths, I would say I'm pretty good at reflecting. I'm good at self-care and compassion, and giving that compassion to others as well. So I'm going to switch that on right now. I'm going to switch those strengths on right now. And what am I going to do? Well, I'm actually going to find a quiet spot for 20 minutes. I'm going to have a cup of tea, and maybe I'll read something. And I'm going to focus on just breathing slowly. So you can see that this process is really fantastic because it accepts the uncomfortable emotions that you've got. All emotions are okay. We shouldn't say, I'm not allowed to feel those emotions. Let's acknowledge them. And what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do for ourselves about the emotions that we're feeling? So that's a very helpful exercise. That's something that you can take yourself through whenever you feel it, and you can take other people through as well. Your children. By the way, my children are not homeschooled. Well, they're kind of homeschooled. They're both at university. They're 19 and 22. But yeah, I still feel overwhelmed sometimes when I get interrupted. But that's the way it is. So the beautiful thing about emotions is that they are like the weather. They pass. They flow through us. And I think if we don't try and stop them or deny them, we just allow them to be and allow them to go through, I think it's a really good thing. All right, next up is I wanted to talk to you about anxious feelings in your body and sort of the biological or the physiological mechanisms that are happening when we have these anxious feelings. I'd love to talk to you a lot more about it, but I just want to focus on one part of your system that will really help. So anxious feelings in our body. Now you can see that visual there is of a person, and you can see it looks like an electrical system there. But what that is that's a visual of your vagus nerve. Now that is a huge nerve in your body. Vagus actually means wandering in Latin, and you can see that it's kind of wandering all down your body. This is incredible, this nerve. It goes through your face as well, through your facial muscles. It starts at the base of your cranium, at the back of your head there. The interesting thing about this nerve is that it regulates our heart rate and our breathing and digestion. It's part of our parasympathetic nervous system. It's our rest and digest. We want this switched on. We want it stimulated. Now, the issue is with this particular nerve that we can have what's called high vagal tone or low vagal tone, which means that if we have something called low vagal tone, it's associated with poor emotional regulation, inflammation with our body and our immune system. It's involved in our metabolism. And low vagal tone is associated with symptoms of depression, anxiety, and a sensitivity to stress. So I think when we're a lot in our sympathetic nervous system, when we have that fight-flight response, and we're there, just really trying to manage what we feel is an immediate threat, if we're constantly in that state, we can risk being in low vagal tone. We don't want that. We actually want to counteract that sympathetic nervous system of fight-flight. We want high vagal tone, and high vagal tone is associated with better mood, more psychological balance, reduced inflammation, and less stress and anxiety. So how do we get high vagal tone? Really, really simply. We do little things, and these are our instant anxiety calmers. We can do things like just deep and slow breathing. Singing, humming, chanting, gargling. Now, when you think about where the vagus nerve begins, it's right near our mouth. And so anything that's kind of going to vibrate our mouths, like gargling and singing, is also going to stimulate the top of our vagus nerve. So it's really effective. Speaking does it as well. Cold, so cold on our face, going outside in the cold, having a 30-second cold shower. Now, that's for the brave. But yeah, I haven't quite been able to do that for myself. I'd rather go out in the cold in the morning if I have to do something like that. Exercise is really good for our vagus nerve. Meditation. If you are feeling really strong feelings of anxiety, my recommendation is if you're going to do a meditation, do a guided meditation. Because sometimes when we just sit there and we think, oh, I'm going to do meditation for 20 minutes, and we're just sitting there with our anxious thoughts, it can actually make things worse. So a guided meditation will distract us from our own thoughts and put some more calming thoughts in our mind. Massage is really good, even self-massage if you can't convince someone else to do it. socialising, laughing. I mean, laughing again, here it is in the mouth and the face. And interestingly, probiotics and balancing your gut, because you can see from that picture of the vagus nerve, it goes right down into your gut. And what's really interesting is we get messages from our brain down to our gut, but we get more messages from our gut up to our brain. And there is growing research around our microbiome and a link to anxiety and depression. And if we have an imbalance there, there's a correlation. Okay, so which of these are you going to try? Maybe you do some of these already, and maybe you're going to do more of it. So I just wanted you to sort of take a moment to register what you could do more of or try. So I'll just give you a second there, just have a think about that. It's certainly worth giving it a go. All right, so, oh, and there's a lovely cup of coffee and some comfortable slippers there. All right, so I wanted to talk to you about well-being and what's called the good life, and some research by psychologist Martin Seligman, who's one of the world leading researchers in positive psychology and flourishing. And he created a theoretical model for what makes up a good life, and that is the ability to create a life with authentic and sustained well-being. So the model is called PERMA, and brings people from surviving to thriving. So each letter of PERMA represents an area of well-being. So I'm just going to briefly show you what those areas are, and I'll go into them in a little bit more detail. You can see this is on page 6 of your book. So firstly, we have P for positive emotions, E for engagement, R for positive relationships, M for meaning, and A for accomplishment. Now, since the model was released, other researchers believe there was another area of well-being that should be included, and that's health, physical health. And that makes a lot of sense because our mind and body are one, and it's really difficult to sustain well-being when our physical, we're not in our own physical optimal health. Okay, so a little bit more detail. So positive emotions is about focusing on ways to engage, to generate positive emotions. Engagement is about finding activities that make us feel calm, focused and joyful. Relationships and positive relationships are about cultivating these positive, healthy relationships. Meaning is about finding meaning and purpose in life. Accomplishment is about achieving goals that make us flourish. And health is about taking practical steps to be in optimal health. So let's start with focusing on positive emotion. So this is about consciously focusing on ways that we can generate positive emotion. This includes ways to consciously we'll go, well, what's fun? And choosing to be optimistic and gaining enjoyment from daily tasks. And I want to talk about something called savouring. And savouring is about once we're in a moment that's really enjoyable, that it's almost like we consciously shine a light on that moment. We really tune in to it and we get very mindful, and we can even commentate on it. We can even say to ourselves, like, say for example, I go for a walk after, which I do every day, and I think this is a beautiful day. I'm really enjoying this walk. I can feel the air on my face, the sun on my face. I'm comfortable in my body. You know, I really enjoy this. So it's really sinking into the moment. It's kind of milking the moment and getting the most out of it. So savouring is really important. So I think now take a moment to think about what are those simple, small activities in your day that make you feel the most joy. And they can be the tiniest things, you know, my first coffee in the morning, decaf, mind you. But yeah, my first coffee in the morning, I absolutely love. So what are they? And they don't have to be huge. They're small things are absolutely fine. They're often the best. All right, let's move on to engagement. So this concept of engagement is about being totally focused and absorbed in a task, where we seem to be, it's almost like you're in the zone or you're in flow, and you can lose track of time when you're engaged. So, you know, engagement helps us to remain calm, present, focused and joyful. And these are activities that meet our need for engagement, elevate our sense of well-being. So what are those things that you do that are most fun for you? Think of those, you know, what are your top 3 that you enjoy absolutely the most? How do you tap into these interest areas? Are there certain things that you used to do a long time ago, maybe even in your childhood, that you don't do anymore, but, you know, you remember that, and, you know, could you start doing that again? I know people have taken up hobbies that they used to do. Some friends have been talking about, well, I'm trying knitting again. It's not fun in the beginning, but it certainly is when you get the flow on. You know, anything at all. Bike riding is something that my husband and I took up at the end of last year. And for me, I just feel completely engaged in that when I'm doing it. I never thought I would say this, but I also feel really engaged doing a crossword. I think we've replaced our daily commute with doing the crossword. Yeah, if you had asked me 3 months ago whether I'd ever do a crossword, I would say no, but yeah. So does it seem like it might be important for you to arrange your life to have more fun, you know, more time for more of these things that create engagement for you? And if so, how might you take action in that direction? What are you going to do for yourself? Okay, now positive relationships. And I think this is really important. We're in isolation. It's called isolation. And what's really interesting is that loneliness, and for a lot of people there is a sense of loneliness, real loneliness, and it can literally causes pain in the brain, the same centre for physical pain. And so it's really important to cultivate positive relationships particularly at this time. They're a very important part of our well-being. As humans, we're social beings who are hardwired to bond and connect with each other. We need positive, healthy relationships that bring us love, connection and intimacy. So I wanted to ask you, who are your supports? Who are the people who make you feel uplifted and make you feel good about yourselves? Now, I know there are some people in our lives, we walk away from them, we don't feel that way. And what I'm recommending to you is that you consciously focus on the people who do make you feel that way, who do make you feel uplifted, who do support you, and they do make you feel good. And I have one piece of advice: go more often and stay longer. So in our case, right at the moment, you know, we can, here in Australia, we can exercise with one other person within 5 kilometres. Do it with a person who makes you feel good. If you're on Zoom, have a longer Zoom with someone who makes you feel good. I'm not saying cut people out of your lives. I'm just saying for those people who make you feel great, go more often and stay longer. And stay socially connected. And as I mentioned, we're extremely sensitive to being included or left out. And we are being told to, you know, socially distance, but maybe we can change the language. And there's a bit of a movement out there around this, where we say that we're physically distancing, but we're still staying socially connected. I think, you know, it's a funny thing, because sometimes I walk past people and there's a sense of fear, you know, do you have the virus? And I think sometimes, you know, I consciously smile with my eyes because no one can see my face. And I really want to still connect with people, even though we have to sort of stay apart. Okay, the next one is meaning. Now, you know, what's the meaning of life? Why are we all here? And I think it's really important that we do have a sense of purpose in our lives. So meaning in life comes from serving something that's bigger than ourselves. It's having a sense of purpose and an answer to why am I here on the earth. It's considered essential to our well-being. And in positive psychology, we call this eudaimonic well-being. And, you know, elements of this well-being is that what we're doing in our life not only serves ourselves, but there's a sense of service to others, service to the community, service to family. There's an altruistic element to what we're doing. I mean, I certainly feel with this type of work and this wellbeing work, my intention is to improve your wellbeing and make your experience just that little bit better. And I'm really connected to that. So what beliefs or organisations or activities give you a sense of meaning? Are you a member of particular organisations? You know, I know people who are in the SES or who, you know, are helping at food banks or doing some kind of charity. Incidentally, helping behaviour is excellent for our wellbeing. It really helps when we do things for others. So, you know, that's my question to you. What is it? Who do you belong to? And how does that give you a sense of purpose and meaning in your life? And that's a big question, and that's something to really contemplate. But to tap into that meaning, and when you think about the grief cycle, you really want to get there because it's really going to help you cope. And accomplishment. We all want to feel that we're achieving something in our lives. Achievement is having this sense of accomplishment. It's creating and meeting goals that gives us a sense of pride and fulfillment, and that improves our well-being and allows us to thrive and flourish. So, I mean, you could set yourself a goal. What's a goal that you'd like to accomplish, big or small? It could be a goal that you want to set today. It could be a goal that you want to set, you know, when we're out of isolation or when this is over. For me, you know, I've got some health goals that I want to achieve. I want to lose a few kilos. And I think that for me is a goal that I want to achieve. I want to get a few things done with my work. But I want to be easy about it too. I don't want to put pressure on myself with these goals. These goals need to be something that in the end make me feel okay. And also they're not set in stone. So if we don't get there, it's kind of okay, and we can modify and change them. Okay, and then health. And so this is the addition to the PERMA. Our body and mind are one. As I said, life is easier and more enjoyable when we're in our own personal optimal health. It involves looking after our body by taking practical steps to eat, exercise and sleep well. So what action would you take to increase your health? What's a small step that you might do? And not huge, but something that's achievable. It might be going for a walk every day. Just a small walk, start with a small one. So it could be around food, walking, or it could be sleeping. Now, sleeping is one of my pet topics. My obsession with sleep started when I had a very wakeful baby. My first child was what was called a wakeful baby, and I really struggled with sleep and sleep deprivation. And now for me, it's just something that I really cherish. So I'm showing you a picture of coffee because coffee is has one of the biggest impacts on our sleep, and particularly if we drink coffee after lunchtime. And if it's caffeinated, I drink decaf now because I realised it was really impacting on my sleep. So, it's probably something to think about in terms of how much coffee you have. And no surprise that I'm going to talk about these wonderful devices that we all love, and they do keep us connected, but they also keep us awake. So, a lot of people have their phones outside of their bedroom, and switch them off, an hour before sleep, so that our body has a chance to sort of get that melatonin happening ready for sleep. The effects of sleep deprivation are pretty serious. Aside from the medical and the psychological, really we're less productive when we're sleep deprived. It takes us longer to do stuff. We have a slower reaction time, so it's almost as if we're like more than 0.05 if we weren't drinking alcohol. We make more mistakes, and we have trouble making decisions and solving problems and coping with change. So I think there's a lot of incentive. And the World Health Organization has declared sleep deprivation an epidemic. So we're in a pandemic and an epidemic. And the truth is nearly half Australians get inadequate sleep. I'm wondering actually whether you're getting more sleep now anyway, because for those of us working from home or those of us who are not working at the moment, there's not the urgency to get out of bed. So I'm wondering whether anyway, naturally things are happening where we're getting more sleep. But my question to you is, when was the last time you got a full 8 hours sleep, more than 3 days in a row? And so I think it's really important. Everything is good when our sleep is good. And I recommend this TED Talk. This TED Talk is called Sleep is Your Superpower by Matt Walker, and it's about 20 minutes. And I think it's really worthwhile watching to kind of really hit home as to why it's so important to sleep. All right, so we're nearly at the end of this webinar, and I've got a couple more questions for you. And this is your wellbeing plan. So imagine it's September 2021, a year from now. Looking back at this time of hardship, what would your older, wiser self say to the current you? You know, what advice would you give yourself, you know, having had the experience, having been through it? So I think that's something, some people do this as a letter to self. So, you know, in your own time, take a moment to kind of do that. I think it's a really good exercise. And my other question to you is, which wellbeing practices will you gain or maintain to help you survive and thrive throughout this time? Because there's a lot of things that are outside of our control right now, but the 6 elements of PERMA are within your control. You can make decisions about what you're going to do in all those areas of your life. You can make decisions to process your emotions in an accepting way. You can acknowledge and accept that we're going through a grief cycle, and it's completely normal and completely understandable given what we're going through. So that concludes my session. Hammock is a very comfortable place to be, and I hope that you get that wonderful sensation as many times as you can over the next period. You find those pockets of calm and well-being. I'm just going to stop my share here and say thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to your questions.